Hey, everybody. Welcome to this live stream of the Comical Heathen podcast. This is your host and headmaster, the world's most highly educated stand-up comedian, Dr. Jerry Jaffe. And I got to mute this monitor over here. Okay. So welcome to this live stream. The 12 people who listen to this podcast regularly know that I'm on a little bit of a mission. I'm actually writing a book on religious satire, and I'll give you a quick update about that. The manuscript will be submitted to the publisher. Is okay. We're just having a little bit of a delay there. Oh, I'm just rebooted. There we go. Hopefully you don't get a lot of that. I'm in my hidden bunker deep beneath the university where I teach, surrounded by books and theater paraphernalia. If you haven't noticed, this is my lucky sheep. And over here is a mask I made for a play. This is actually the Jungle Book, The Scary Snake. So you find that kind of crap in theater professor offices. Anyway, I was just saying my book on religious satires, the manuscript's being submitted on Monday. So that's exciting for me. And then it'll go into the next phase of all like typesetting and proofreading and stuff like that. So I'll keep you updated about that. And but working on that book started a journey where I'm interviewing people, a lot of comedians and some other people about satire and social issues and critical thinking skills. And I often notice things in the news that like spark my curiosity button. Little red flags go off. And there was just something in the news today. The New York Times, like the front page of their website, but if you scroll down a little bit, a deceased nun was exhumed after 4 years of burial and found to be undecayed. And some Catholics consider that to be a miracle. And I actually found two articles. The New York Times one was just like a pandering fluff piece. And Yahoo had an article that actually talked about what this phenomenon is. And what it basically amounts to is, if you think of it scientifically, there's a lot of ways a body can decay. There's not just one way for that process to occur. And I don't know what the odds are, but if you have just the right circumstances, very little decay might occur. And the other thing I liked is that the kind of Catholic definition of this phenomenon is little to none decay. And so that's hilarious because little means you can just make this shit up as you go along. Like there can be a little bit, that's close enough for a saint. But if you're watching this, either you're one of my best friends, your last name is Jaffe, or you're interested in conspiracy theories. And that's what we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes to an hour. I have two great guests. One is author and professional debunker, Ben Radford. And he's been on before, and he's just so fantastic. So I'll look forward to chatting with him in a minute. And we also have master magician, Bobby Borgia, who is one of the world's greatest magicians and the owner of Keller's Comedy Club in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's one of the great comedy venues and magic venues as well. He's not a magician with technology, though. So he has tried to log into the stream twice now and failed. I think the room he's in might have bad connection. So I just have my fingers crossed that we'll add Bobby into the conversation as soon as he gets here. And then if he doesn't, we'll talk to his invisible cousin and call it a magic trick, I guess. I do want to say this. I'm putting together a 4-part series on conspiracy theories, and this is the kick it off conspiracy theory episode. It's like, what are conspiracy theories? What are different ways to think about conspiracy theories? And see, Bobby has reconnected to our green room, so we'll add him in about 90 seconds when I finish his rambling intro. And the next month's topic is going to be the first Sunday of October, and we're going to talk about pseudoscience and anti-science conspiracy theories like intelligent design and flat earthers. And my guests are going to be science comedian Brian Mallow and science professor Dr. Zane Johnson. But for today, we're going to kick off this whole 4-part series. And I have an article. I always have an article. I don't know why. I still read the news. I may be the last one. And I've just noticed in the news the past couple of months that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has sort of emerged as a kind of almost like a trendy pseudo challenger to Biden for like a Democratic presidential nomination. He'll never get it. So it is a little bit of a 15 minutes of fame and celebrity for him. But he is a well-known anti-vaxxer, as well as peddling other conspiracy theories, including some that are anti-Semitic adjacent. And so just having a prominent political official like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the news was really like the needle on the haystack that tilted my scales of critical thinking to want to talk about conspiracy theories. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring on, literally I said I'm going to bring on, and Bobby's connection dropped. So all I'm going to do is bring on author of Big If True and many other books and articles, professional skeptic and professor himself, Ben Radford. Ben!
I'm frozen. No, I'm not.
Yes. Well, welcome, Ben. Welcome back. We have
Thank you.
talked in the past about both ghosts and UFOs. And those, for the scale that I work on, those episodes have gotten a lot of hits. So they're popular topics, and you're a charming and popular
Oh, posh.
speaker. So thank you for joining us. Bobby has re-added to the stream, but let me talk to Ben for a couple minutes so the screen doesn't get too crowded too quickly. And I'll bring Bobby on in 4 minutes and 27 seconds.
All those bees. It's hard to keep track. Come on,
Yes.
JJ.
Hey, this podcast is buzzing with bees. See what I did there? Okay. That could be the best joke of the episode. If you're here for the humor, it might be time to tune off. But let's just say, Ben, what are you up to right now? What's going on in Ben's life?
Well, keep him busy with stuff. I have a podcast called Squaring the Strange, and it comes out. Thank you very much. Comes out every 2 weeks. And we just dropped an episode a couple days ago, and this time we had a guest who was talking about agritainment, and you might be wondering, hey, what's agritainment, Dr. Jerry C. Jaffe? Well, it's actually a cross between agriculture and entertainment, and specifically, she's looking at the role of rural haunted houses, and it's cool. Sort of talking about the tropes in American culture about why scary shit happens, out the Deliverance, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jeepers Creepers. So that's a fun thing. I'm working on that. I'm working on an article for Skeptical Inquirer magazine on basically looking back and asking, is Bigfoot dead? Saying, Bigfoot's been around arguably since the 50s. And some people claim that it goes back further than that, but if you're talking about the cultural Bigfoot, it really only dates back to the 50s. And so I'm sort of looking at the past, say, 23 years, what evidence for Bigfoot has shown up. And so I'm digging into that. And another case I'm looking into is psychic detective claims. So lots of things being juggled at the moment.
Excellent. Well, you are known as the Chupacabra Slayer.
I am.
So cryptozoology is a thing that you have some expertise in. So you're the perfect Bigfoot hunter from the skeptical perspective. When you see the TV shows, I haven't seen a TV show lately about Bigfoot hunters, but the genre, Bigfoot hunters, ghost hunters, those types of shows rarely show you anything.
What? Come on, Jerry.
It's people creeping around with like their goggles on, their night vision goggles, telling you that creepy things are happening just off camera. So.
Yeah, I mean it's part of a bigger tradition, of course, of reality TV and inspired, of course, by ghost hunters and shows of that ilk. And I mean, on one level, they're all the same. Right. They are sort of amateurs, sort of portraying themselves as. And to be clear, I mean, in some cases they actually do have credentials. In most cases, they don't. And to the extent they do have credentials, they're not necessarily relevant. To what they're finding, particularly in ghost hunting. And basically what they're doing is I wrote about a lot of this in my books, Scientific Paranormal Investigation and also Investigating Ghosts, is they're basically doing what's anomaly hunting, right? They're instead of saying, okay, here is this alleged entity, could be lake monsters, could be Bigfoot, could be ghosts, take your pick, and applying a science-based, evidence-based empirical plan to unearth evidence about it. Instead, they're anomaly hunting. Like they go out in the wilderness and like, oh, did you hear that? What was that? You know, they're looking for anything weird.
Sure.
Anything weird could be a sound. It could be a call. It could be something on the ground. Take your pick. And again, that's
like a fuzzy photo of a UFO, the fuzziness of the anomaly feeds the storytelling. Because like if you knew what was making the noise definitively, it wouldn't be an anomaly. But if there was no noise, it wouldn't be an anomaly. So you need an unidentified, vague noise to be an anomaly.
And I mean, and you know, as I talked about on the show last time, I mean, you know, my criticism is not that people are investigating weird stuff, because I've done that. I've spent decades doing that. My criticism is instead that they're not doing it right. They're not bringing good science to it. They're not doing their job, frankly. And so that's, you know, when I talk to Bigfoot hunters and ghost hunters, they say, look, you know, you may consider me to be the enemy because I'm skeptical. But I'm trying to do you a favor. I'm trying to say, I'm trying to get you to up your game. If you want scientists and the public to believe what you're saying and these things are real, then produce better quality evidence.
Right. And the wrong word is coming to my head. But like Bigfoot hunters and you know, unusual beasts. Is that cryptozoology?
Cryptozoology.
It was in there somewhere. Yeah, that is one of the sort of interesting, like I'm going to say pseudosciences, but because hypothetically, some of these animals could be found.
Sure.
And I think in the past, like 100 years ago, some animals were found, kind of rare, hard to find. But the point is, when that happens, they're found. They're not an anomaly.
I mean, you bring up that's sort of one of the talking points among monster hunters and cryptozoologists. They say, well, they say scientists don't know everything, and of course, obviously that's true. Yeah, guilty. Science doesn't know everything and never will, right? And they say, well, you know, we're still finding animals to this day. That's true, but what kind of animals are they finding? I happen to know this because I've looked into it. The sorts of animals they're finding are small insects. They are subspecies of known animals. These are not entirely new animals. Not, oh my God, there's this animal that we didn't even know. We don't even know where it fits into the taxonomy of life. Like, what is this thing? Like, no, the kinds of the sorts of aminals. Wow,
aminal.
Yeah, the sorts of things that we're finding. Again, they're subspecies of known animals that were either thought to have gone extinct, or again, just these are refinements. These are not entirely new creatures that would be that you would expect. If they were Bigfoot, Chupacabra, Mothman, and so on.
No, I mean, I was just watching a documentary a few years ago about a biologist who does like deep sea research, and he'll like dredge like deep down. And he claimed every time he did that, he found something new. Now, I don't know if that's just something he said to the camera, but hypothetically, it makes sense. Like that's an unexplored part of the globe that's hard to get to.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you mean by new.
And it's like variations of microorganisms, right?
Right. I mean, and again, so it's sort of a nuanced argument there, right? Because for example, one of the cryptozoologists' favorite animals is the coelacanth, which was found off the coast of Madagascar in 1938. And they sort of hold this up. See, there was this giant fish that that was rediscovered. If we can discover this thing, then why couldn't there be Bigfoot? Well, Bigfoot, of course, could exist. It's possible.
Yeah.
The important thing here is that this was a known animal. People knew about this creature. The coelacanth. It was not undiscovered. It was thought to be extinct. They were wrong. So it's not something that, oh my God, what is this? 4-foot giant fish? It's like, oh, we knew about these before. We just thought they were gone. They're not.
Yeah, and now we have a specimen.
Very big difference.
We should celebrate with my fancy new cup, by the way. I don't know if you can...
I see that. Nice.
I have up in the corner. It's kind of small. This is my new logo. It says Comical Heathen in Darwin fish.
Did you do that?
My daughter, who's a very talented artist, did it. You can find her on Instagram under her working name, which is KB. You see some great artwork there.
Cool.
And she made that for me. So it's on it's my new logo on all my merch. let's talk about conspiracy theories for a second.
Sure.
On the one hand, is it a conspiracy theory that comedians just run podcasts to try to push their merch? I think we're still investigating. There is some evidence, but I claim that evidence is fuzzy at this point, so could be interpreted in numerous ways. Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory to talk about, or that someone brings up you enjoy debunking it, or just it's fun? I mean, I actually have started using the phrase with my students of conspiracy stories, because it's really a misuse of the word theory.
Yeah, and I mean, there's lots of things to parse out. I mean, you know, as you point out, you know, theory. There's lots of use of, you know, scientists use theory in a different way than the average person does,
right?
And same thing with the word conspiracy, right? Because let's just be upfront: conspiracies do exist. Like, literally, that is what happened, right? So 9/11 was a conspiracy. There actually was a group of people that conspired to you know, to
do
carry out these
terrorist
attacks, right? No one doubts that. The question they come up with, like, okay, it was a conspiracy, but it involved, you know, the Bush administration. Like, no, that's where you start getting into these deeper waters. So, you know, it sort of depends on what it is. So, I mean, there are some conspiracy theories that are interesting in and of themselves. They don't really harm people, right? So, if people believe that the people didn't really land on the moon, it was all a big hoax. In some ways, whatever, right? I mean, it's not a. If you believe that, that's not necessarily going to cause you harm. It's not going to make you lose money, this and that. On the other end of the spectrum, there are conspiracy theories that absolutely do cause harm. And, you know, here I'm thinking, for example, QAnon is a perfect example, right? You had somebody who sort of, you know, latched on to the child trafficking legends. And, you know, one guy, as I'm sure you know, in Washington, D.C., went into Come to Ping Pong Pizza in D.C. with a gun, trying to liberate the child captives that he believed that Hillary Clinton was involved in trafficking. And what's interesting about that case is that, again, you know, the guy thought he was doing the right thing. He's like, you know, I'm going to save these children and I'm going to go and rescue them. The whole
Ben, this is one of my favorite stories, but Bobby's like reconnected for the fourth time. So let's just bring him right in before he disconnects again. So I apologize for interrupting, but I'm bringing to our stream master magician Bobby Borgia. Bobby, how the hell are you?
Now we have Wi-Fi. It's modern tech. I can vanish an airplane.
Yes. Yeah. Your audio has a little bit of a delay in it, just to let you know. Yes. So you are. Give us the 1 minute bio for the people who don't know Bobby Borgia. What do we need to know about you?
Oh boy, creative designer, magic consultant. The movie Now You See Me did the magic for all the film. Designed magic for Pink after NSYNC Destiny's Child using illusions in their concert. 9 countries. I performed live in 89 countries. Vegas, Atlantic City, every TV show. Blah blah blah. You know, I mean, I'm grateful and lucky, and I own a whole magic and comedy club and restaurant and bar called Keller's Modern Magic and Comedy Club. It's very hip.
It's in Erie, Pennsylvania. Of course, that's near where I live. I've been there many times, both as performer and audience member and supporter. It's a great place. I'm just going to say, and only because it's true, when you crafted it into a magic comedy venue, you created something unique and special. There's nothing like it within an X 100-mile radius of the Midwest. Like, there's a lot of nice comedy clubs who I love, but you just have something unique there. So
thank you. I wanted to do something different.
Yeah. And also, those 89 countries include Japan, where I used to live. So Bobby and I often greet each other with a little bit of Japanese. Genki desu ka?
You're so great. I'll tell you, Harry, I am more into conspiracy theories than you think.
Okay, lay it on me.
When I was a kid, I met Cooper, author of Behold a Pale Horse, very into the UFO themes. I did a ton of conventions in Vegas and things, but I really was all the conspiracy theories, anywhere from, you know, when Bill Cooper released the Zapruder film with the actual gentleman that shot JFK was
Mhm.
the driver of the car, William Greer, who used a gas propellant switchbox and gun. You see the guy turn around and shoot him right in the head. It was amazing. What I fucking it really sent me down a rabbit hole of what?
Yeah.
And I don't John Mulrooney. Of course, you know John Mulrooney, right?
Mhm. The comedian,
This
right?
this guy is a conspiracy theory king. So every time we go like hug a tree when I'm done, I'm like, what's
Well, you used a great phrase, which is rabbit hole, because I think a lot of conspiracy theories have that quality. If you ever saw in just a standard like a drama where they're like have a bulletin board and there's evidence like different photos and things, and there's like thread that connects all the photos. I feel like a lot of conspiracy theories are random things being connected with thread. Like it's
well,
not correct evidence like a detective or scientist would want, but you get this like the internet really magnifies this because it becomes the thread. Like it can
right.
through the internet you can go through 3 topics
I
that
agree.
yeah.
There's more truth to some of the conspiracy theories coming to light, and
Yeah.
Holy Mother of God, which is
Right.
kind of interesting.
Right.
I think it's a fine edge on the fence with conspiracy. Some of them, like
Right.
controlling weather, um, project Project Stargate that the government had for years with using techniques,
Mm-hmm.
moving like the Manchurian Candidate, et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
Right.
now there's stuff surfacing that, yep, they were doing it. It's pretty
Yeah.
wild.
Well,
It's pretty
Ben
wild.
was just talking about something similar in that there are conspiracies. Like we can be sure that the government is doing stuff right now we don't know about. So as journalists almost or as scientists, we want to like be able to detangle historic conspiracies
Correct.
from conspiracy theories. And
Yeah.
there's this
So
like gray area in the middle where you got to like dig into the evidence.
yeah, there is.
Mhm.
Radin, Dr. Dean Radin, he's the head of noetic science.
Right.
He authored the book Real Magic he worked on Project Stargate and
Mhm.
he's a scientist. So his on that, you're going, this is actually tangible stuff that they were doing,
Mhm.
when you go into the crazy things of the flat earth, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just, I think that is a lot of people just jumping on the bandwagon and the lack of awareness now.
Well, and I think that again, because I like to use the phrase conspiracy stories, sometimes stories are fun.
They are. They're
Yeah, I mean, ghost stories are fun. Bigfoot stories are fun.
wait a minute, I don't think I want him to be real.
Yes. As the title of one of Ben's recent books is Big If True. And it would be
really?
great. Yeah, it's a great book.
Big if true, yes.
I just booked Bobcat Goldthwait at the club just because he did the Bigfoot documentary. I'm like, I don't know if he's funny, but I know he did the Bigfoot. I want to talk to him.
I'm a fan of Bobcats going way back. So
Yes.
and actually I saw him when he was coming to town and did a great set, and again sort of the not just the comedy but also the Bigfoot interest crossover. I'm more skeptical than he is, but he's a good guy.
Yeah, Ben
Okay,
is.
so
Yeah,
can we
go
talk
ahead.
about it? Is that possible? Because I that is the one topic to me that are enough witnesses. And I dated a girl that lived in Washington when I was like 18 or 19 years old.
Was she 1/4 Bigfoot?
Was she?
Was she?
Wow.
Well, that is just before you jumped in, Bobby. Ben was saying that one of his current projects is working on Bigfoot. So
I would love to talk about that if we could just touch it. Is that okay?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I really think there's something there. And I've seen enough people that are like, look. And with my dad, and driving down the road, and to reality, this thing walked out in front of the car. And Bobby, it was so big, I couldn't believe what I was looking.
Right. Did you see, this was a year or two ago, and it wasn't like big like Tiger King or something, but there was like a 3 or 4 part Bigfoot documentary on Netflix a year or two ago. What fuck was that called? But the thing
Ben,
was,
I think you're talking about
the marijuana
Sasquatch.
ring.
Yeah, it was called Sasquatch, and it was actually really interesting.
Yeah.
I was skeptical at first, but yeah, that was. You think it's not Bigfoot, and it kind of is, but not really. It's worth a look.
What do you,
Bigfoot, which is kind of wild.
we didn't hear the last thing you said, Bobby. Sorry, your audio broke up there.
I was agreeing with Ben that it was not really about Bigfoot.
Right. Yes.
Little bait and switch.
Yes.
Yeah, it was It was like, here's your carrot. It was
still interesting, but bait and switch.
Yeah, but the thing in that, and there was a lot of anecdotal stuff too, so I wouldn't call it even hard journalism, but it seemed to be that one of the Lego blocks was that the people running the marijuana farm used Bigfoot stories to cover their crimes.
Yeah, and there is a story about the family of that marijuana that really did.
Yeah,
it's something that I do know about.
Can I, Ben? I'm gonna piggyback on what Bobby just said, but just ask a question. I was posting on social media this week trying to get people to talk about conspiracy theories to see if there's anything we could use. I do have two things, but one which is more directly germane is my friend John texted me. He's been on this podcast. He's a local comedian. He's sort of skeptically minded person. And so he was just wondering, Ben or Bobby, what advice would you have to someone who you're having a conversation with, the other person is all in on a conspiracy theory that seems unlikely or nonsense to you? Are there things you can say that would help the conversation as the skeptical side of the conversation? Have you found any rhetorical comments that help?
Yeah, I'll start on that one. There's a couple things that jump to mind. One of them is asking, and again, in all sincerity, not snarky, not just sort of saying, how would that work? Right. So someone say, okay, you have this whole elaborate thing. Like, okay, well, how does this work? I'll give you one quick example. I was at Dragon Con about 8 years ago in Atlanta. I was actually just there this past weekend.
I know, jealous.
Yeah, it was good times, and I was actually on a panel on conspiracies, and as we would show up, and as you might expect, towards the end of the Q&A, one of the people gets up and he starts talking about 9/11, and that's fine. I mean, whatever. It's audience participation. Ask your question. But here's what happened. So he got up there and up to the mic, and he started talking about 9/11, and he said, "Well, I don't believe the official story," and I said, "Okay," but I said, before you go on, to tell us what happened. And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, you have the mic, you have a big audience in front of you. If you're saying you don't believe the official story, that's fine. Tell us what happened on 9/11."
Yeah.
And it was like,
Did he freeze?
Yeah, it was fascinating. He's like, well, he's like, you have to follow the money. I said, no, with all due respect, you don't need to follow the money. You say you know what happened 9/11. Tell us.
Yeah,
he's like, well, and it was clear. And again, it wasn't meant as a gotcha moment. It was clear that he didn't know. He didn't. He
could have had an answer. Like if he had an answer, we wanted to know it.
He had nothing. And so that would be one thing, would be to say, okay, well, again, not confrontation, not snarky, just saying, if you think this is what's going on, then explain it.
Yeah, Ben, you're smart, because we don't know. These are just theories, right? So we don't know. Nobody does really know. And when they start pounding their chest and beating it, going, this is real. I mean, I always stand on the place of looking up the side. But then when you went into the 9/11, there was an amazing book that came out that kind of made me go, what? Because I always question something about 9/11.
Of course.
But Rebecca Toth, I think her name is, she wrote a book called Methodical Illusion. And she was a flight attendant that wrote this book about where the passengers really went.
Oh, that kind of stuff.
Whether that's true or not, it just was my. That was all. I never believe or not believe. Right. It's interesting, like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
No, but it's fun. Well,
let me give you one other quick example. Was to tie to 9/11, not to hijack it, but That's
Well,
that's a perfect joke for a setup for
oh
Jerry. I
yeah.
appreciate this. Is in terms of the plane that crashed in the Pentagon. Someone came up to me and said, "Well, I don't think a plane crashed into the Pentagon." I said, "Okay, well, where is it?" They're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Well, we know for a fact that a plane took off. We have the manifest. We have the passengers' names. We know for an absolute fact that there were people on this plane, and the plane did not land anywhere."
Right.
So if everyone's wrong and a plane did not crash, where's the plane?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I got to go.
Well, the thing is, in magic and illusion, we use certain things to deceive people. I did question them because there was no plane at the Pentagon, and I go, "Where is the plane?" So where? And that's how I met the woman, Rebecca. She was on I think she was the Coast Stand when I first heard of her, and this book, My Illusion, she explains where that plane went and where the other ones went. Now, whether that, I don't know, but you're looking at all the possibilities.
Yeah, I want to give also a quick answer. Then I want to ask Bobby a question while we still have him. But a quick thing too, something I'll always point out to students. It's sort of a apocryphal old mafia saying: 3 people can keep a secret if 2 are dead.
It's great.
The number of people who it would take to fake a plane crash and then a plane hiding would be immense. It would require hundreds of agents. And so it doesn't mean it did or didn't happen, but but that's a huge absence in the argument. And that, the people who might talk about the faking the moon landing is sort of the same thing. If Kubrick filmed something to professional level, take hundreds of stagehands, right?
That same thing with the UFO conspiracy, and now all the what are we doing right now? What's happening with the UFO world? I can't think of the word.
Hearings.
Right. Yeah. It's the disclosure. I mean, the government has been trying to I'll stand on all this. With that is you can hide so much of it.
Well, Bobby, one thing I'm going to say to you and the listening audience is also, this is live, but in a couple of weeks, I'll just edit it and put it out as an audio podcast too. So you can share it with your friends.
Nice.
But a few months ago, or maybe last year, Ben and I did a conversation all about UFOs. So if anyone is interested in that topic, please, maybe I'll put a link to that episode in the description of this episode when I post it. Very, very fun.
What your take is on it. And I just think that right now is getting very loud, and there's stuff, and they're
right.
I mean, God, they're still controlling. Who knows what the truth is? We don't.
Sure.
But there's something.
The It's Something is right before you came on. Ben and I were talking about. Ben was talking about. It's kind of like anomaly hunting, like a UFO, or they call it a UPE. Is that the new expression? Unidentified aerial phenomenon. I mean, that is a fuzzy anomaly, like someone saw something that they can't explain. Bobby, I came up with my own expression. It's an unidentified, what the fuck is that object?
Right. That's great. That's great.
But the thing is, an anecdote about an anomaly, even several anecdotes about several anomalies, is interesting, but it's not a thing yet.
Stay in that world of, I would love to believe in things.
Yeah.
Love living in the mystery.
Now, correct me if, because I have a fuzzy memory, Bobby. One of my heroes was the late Amazing Randy, also a famous magician as well as debunker. You've met him before, haven't you?
Yeah, he actually managed me when I was a kid, and
really,
yeah, James Gray was for like a year or something. He is a very interesting guy, but he followed the path of debunking all the psychics. I mean, that Houdini was, even Harry Keller and Houdini, it was a big back then, and he jumped on that and really made it his world, if you will.
Yeah.
And I remember when they were on That's Incredible, and they had a guy named James Hyder, thank you, and he would move the telephone pages and the pencil.
Yeah.
And he did one thing. He just came out and he goes, here, and he had a box of styrofoam, those little styrofoam. He just put them around the thing, and he goes, "Now move it." Oh, my powers aren't. Oh, how interesting.
How convenient.
Yeah. That just that's like psychic.
Bobby, what do you think of this? Ben, I have a now deceased late uncle who was also a professional magician called Richard Heineman. And he did at one point write a book about how to do magic with some illusions he had invented. But the first chapter was about performance skills. And his advice to magicians was to never portray your illusions or your act as a real thing.
Well,
so, like some magicians do like psychic acts, mentalism, but some people claim to be psychic. So, what do you think about that, Bobby?
I believe in that. I'm on your uncle's shoulders going, yep, there are magicians. And say, well, Uri Geller was the first one. He's a magician. That's it. That's it. Period. And I think over the years, he finally kind of softened it up. But Darren Brown will be the first to go, I do not have powers. I do not, Darren Brown is probably the biggest thing in Europe. He's amazing. But it's, I think that you have these powers and then portray it that way is
unethical.
Great word.
I mean, I have seen performers who come out, Uri Geller's the most famous, but who just will say, like, I woke up with I realized I have these powers. Let me demonstrate. Like, which again, if we can say it's a stage act.
Kreskin.
Yes, but
Kreskin. But so when you portray you're being false, you're not being one with your word. It's real simple. I used to people come up to me after a show, and I did this thing with it was a whole thing with angels, and it was done with cold reading, which I used. I'll admit it, I used cold reading. But
sure.
For real, what would it look like? Right? How many people believe in? Well, people want to believe in something. So I would have married couples come up to me. They're like, "You're really in touch with." It's a trick, but my intention behind that is different. My intention was just to put some positivity out there and go.
To create some awe.
Well, look, I've seen, I've been in the audience when alleged psychics have done their shtick. I mean, I saw John Edward do that, and I mean that's what he does. I mean, and also Teresa Cupido and so on. So, if you're a skeptic and if you know the techniques, it's crystal clear. I mean, it jumps out at you. But you have to keep in mind that most people don't. They're believers. They want to believe. They have the incentive.
They believe in something.
And that to me is really the ethical issue. Is at the point in which you have people who are grieving and crying and talking about their dead, their son died or their this or that, and you have somebody like Edward who just he's like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this, and and just moves on. It's this whole thing, and it's so crass. If you know what they're doing, it's really distasteful.
Who's the new kid that's doing all celebrity?
There's Tyler Perry. There's a couple of them. There's Tyler. What's the hell's name? There's a new crap. There's a new batch every season.
Can I? I'm going to hijack the conversation because I do have a couple of topics I want to make sure we get to. So.
Okay, Mr. Moderator.
Yes. I'm bad at it, but I'm trying. Is like half hour ago I brought up Robert F. Kennedy, and we can talk about his stuff, but also modern American politics have been infested with some conspiracy theory isms. Do you have any idea?
What?
Really? I know. How about approaching that kind of conversation if you do, I mean, I would say point blank, the biggest one would be that the last election was somehow a fraud. Trump really won. Is there a way to talk to a person who thinks that, or should we just debunk it now and people can play this tape for them?
I think there's a way to change people's minds other than changing your way of being by verbalizing and having a conversation. They're already stuck in their way. They're already absolutely, they're like and then argument. And that's why I never politics, religion, those are things. And they're just so set in their ways. So by changing your way of being and not being reactive and being proactive on that, and is not easy, because there are times I want to jump and go, listen, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You can't.
Then what do you think?
I don't know. We have a better.
I don't. Do you have a way to navigate political conspiracy
I would
theories?
say there's a couple things jump to mind. One is there's a really good book by a guy named Mick West, who is he's actually best known for investigating UFO videos and things like that. But Mick wrote a book, came out a year or two back, called "Escaping the Rabbit Hole." And in that book, he sort of looks at, he interviews people who have believed in conspiracy theories. He sort of discusses the ways in which, because some people do get out of them. It's not common, but some people do sort of, come. And so he sort of goes and he has this step-by-step process. And there's no magic to it. I mean, part of it, with all due respect to Bobby, part of it is, it's making connections. It's showing genuine concern and saying, look, not who believes this stupid bullshit. That's not going to do any good. If you say, well, I know you believe this, why do you think that? And you have the conversations, and it's not easy. In some ways, it's sort of like cult deprogramming. But it's, there are ways around it. And so, and so in terms of like for Trump specifically, one way would be to leverage the Republicans who have come out and acknowledge that, yes, in fact, Trump lost the election. DeSantis is one example. For a long time, he was an election denier. And finally, I think it was about a month or 6 weeks ago, during an interview, he let slip that he admitted that Trump lost the fucking election, which is something that 99.8% of the world knows anyway. But you can say, well, look, I know you're a big supporter of DeSantis. Even he admits that the whole thing, and and we can go back to the droopy dog DA. Who am I talking about? The Attorney General. Bill Barr. So Bill Barr said that the conspiracy stuff was crazy. I mean, up and down the line, you have the vast majority of people who otherwise would be Liz Cheney and so on, who are saying, look, man, the game's up. There was nothing to it. And you can say, okay, well, you say you're a hardcore Republican. That's all well and good. Which version of this are you believing? Are you believing the Kool-Aid, or are you believing the other ones?
A great example of the truth is just it is what it is. And then the conspiracy people just start creating these stories in that story group, and you attach on. The politics. Ooh, that's like,
you're unlikely. I mean, with any conspiracy theory buff, to change their mind in one conversation, but your mind and memory works by making connections between synapses. So if you can give them a new connection to think about on their own, like Republicans who are something like that.
When you've
all taken improv classes, and the number one rule of improv is to say yes. And but there's two ways to say yes. You can say yes and, or yes but.
There you go. Okay.
So sometimes if you're having a friendly conversation or a sincere debate, yes but and can be a way. Yes, yes acknowledges their concern and their existence as a human being. Like, yes, it would be terrible if an election was stolen, but have you thought about this evidence? So instead of canceling them,
this is about communication with one another, and a lot of communication. There is, especially after COVID, there's such a distance from people. So when I do meet somebody that just smiles back at me or says hello,
be your friend. Yeah, not your adversary. I put on Facebook. Oh, you've had a lot of interesting girlfriends, Bobby. I've already picked that up in the past half hour.
No, he really said, we've been taught now that this texting, emailing, and the social skills are diminished of being human with one another. It blows my mind. I really just think this world needs a positive wake-up call. And it I don't know what it's going to take, but we need more positivity in this world. That's real simple.
Yep. I did post on Facebook a couple days ago asking people what their favorite conspiracy theories are, and printed out for them. I got like 5 pages worth of things, which I am not going to now read to you. It's actually 10 because it's double-sided. But let me tell you a couple of the ones that stood out to me. And either of you know, either information or opinion, let me know.
Yeah.
Here's one I had heard but never taken seriously, and my brother insists there are people who believe this story, that the moon is hollow.
Yes, that I could go on for an hour with that one.
Have you heard it too, Ben?
I certainly heard it. I mean, you know, one of the reasons that there are conspiracies surrounding the moon. I mean, there's a couple. One of them is that it's the details. We have to rely on other people, right? You and I, we can't literally go to the moon. We have to. We can send spacecraft up. We can send NASA up. We can send astronauts. But at the end of the day, we have no direct way to verify. So we have to. We are understandably limited by the information we're given, and that can engender conspiracies. We go, well, how do we know this? Like, you know, okay.
Well, hearsay. But you know, the one thing about the moon that blows my mind, I've been really studying. I'm working on it, but I've been studying about the moon. I didn't know it is the only, and this is science. It's the only planetary, so whatever that does not rotate. It's the only one in our solar system that doesn't rotate. And that to me as a magician, I went, what? But there was a time when the moon was not in our orbit, and it was documented in books. And then all of a sudden the moon was there. So the theory is it was dragged here. It was built, dragged here. So when, you know, a lot of the conspiracy theories are, you know, that is hollow. There's bases on the other side of the moon. And when something just happened with Russia when the bomb, it was like a giant bell going off, and said many times in the past. I just find it fascinating. That's it.
Well, here's what I think we should do. I think we should start an online petition to have the moon start rotating again, and just get the ball rolling, and just do it.
I'm going to ask. I'm going to have a science professor on the next episode. We talk about science conspiracy theories, so I might ask him about this. I believe the moon does rotate, but it rotates at such a speed that you can't see it rotate from the Earth. It's like rotation matches our rotation. That's why we always see the same side.
That would make sense. That would make sense. And I watched a documentary. Again, it's hearsay, but I'm watching a documentary, and it's like it's the only planetary that does not rotate. And I go, how is that possible? And that just came to me. So I'm going, what am I hearing?
There are even in our soul. Oh, you go, Ben.
No, I was going to say, I'll bet there are astronomers who can settle this matter. We don't need to arm wrestle. We don't need to bet. We don't need to speculate. I bet there are astronomers.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
This is it.
And Dr. Zane Johnson is a biology professor, so I don't want him to be responsible for astronomy questions. I will say, just to cause unnecessary controversy, I have no interest in what an astrologer has to say about this issue. I would only go to an astronomer or an astrophysicist for information.
But I do all the moon stuff, on the moon fascinates me. It really does.
I have my own little 20-second anecdote that encapsulates the moon, which is this. I have a friend. He's a theater enthusiast. He's not an actor, but he loves to go to the theater. I've gone to many plays with him over the years. But he is a computer programmer and kind of like a science nerd. And one day we were talking about the moon, and he said to me, Jerry, there were 10,000 years of poetry about the moon, but it only took 50 years of rocket science to get to the moon. And I said, friend, whose name I won't name, who would want to go to the moon without the 10,000 years of poetry? So we have a long... cultural, it's the nearest body. We can see it quite well compared to anything else in the sky.
Except the sun.
We see the brightness of the sun is blinding, as they say.
Well, as we recall, do you remember when Trump stared at the sun? The leader of the free world is like, oh yeah, there's the sun.
Yes.
It was, wow. I was.
Yes. People voted for that guy. But I do think the moon's proximity to the Earth and the details that we can see even with the naked eye lend itself naturally to a cultural fascination.
You're right, Jerry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you,
what
sir.
Are the other top 10 topics, as we were to say, that people wrote
Yeah,
down?
bang through them before Bobby and I have to go.
Right. Well, one is the anti-vaxxer stuff.
Oh, God, yeah. John Mulrooney. You really do.
Yes. And then please introduce me. I'll gladly open for him next time he's at the club. That aside, another part of the QAnon menage is adrenochrome. And adrenochrome is like a modernized version of what used to be called the blood libel in anti-Semitic circles. Although the people who champion or talk about adrenochrome would deny that they're anti-Semites usually. But even if they are not intentionally being anti-Semitic, they are promoting an anti-Semitic adjacent conspiracy theory.
Oh, it's the same thing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. If you ask him, he will say, "I'm not anti-vax." He's like, "I am not. I'm accused constantly of being anti-vax. I'm not anti-vax at all." And you're like, "Okay, well, on your website, you repeatedly say, well, no, I'm for safe vaccines." Well, we're all for safe vaccines. That's not a distinguishing feature. And he's thimerosal and this MMR, all this bullshit. So on one hand, he's like, well, I'm pro-science. I'm not anti-vax. Yeah, you are. We can see right through it. I'm just raising questions, just asking questions. Right. That's conspiracy. That's that anti-vax bullshit.
Right. Mr. Terry Jaffe, I hate to eat and run, but I do have to. This wasn't long. This wasn't long enough for me. This fascinating. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Bobby. You know I'm a big Bobby Borgia fan, and I will certainly see you again soon.
And that's something that Jerry hears all the time. This isn't long enough for me, so it's
yes. That's a familiar statement. Just please, for the love of God, do not get out a tape measure. Okay. Thank you, Bobby. I'll see you again soon. Love you. Okay. Well, Ben, it is once again just you and I.
I'm frozen. No, I'm not.
A little magic. A little magic.
Yeah. Well, that was great talking to Bobby. That was fun.
Yes. My hero, the amazing James Randi, used to say, if you can do something that a psychic does as a stage illusion that you can demonstrate, so does that prove the psychic's not psychic? Not necessarily, but it does demonstrate a simpler explanation.
A more parsimonious.
Yes, you knew the word I was going for. Yes,
going for the Occam's razor. Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's when Uri Geller had his little think tank in California back when he was famous, and there were 2 or 3 scientists studying him, and those guys, by the way, had questionable credentials, but I'm not going to attack them now. My father, who's in show business, and my uncle, who's a magician, said, yeah, he'll do his illusions for scientists, but he won't do them in front of magicians.
Yep. Think about that for a second.
What do you think what could be a lesson? Is there any kind of like a meta advice for dealing with conspiracy theories?
Well, I would say there's a couple. One thing to keep in mind is that more people believe in conspiracy theories than is widely assumed. They just believe in different kinds. So you find there's a ideological and political breakdown. So it's a bit of a caricature to people think of conspiracy theories to think of sort of the rambling Alex Jones tinfoil hat type. And to be clear, I mean, those do exist, but they're of course the extremes. So keep in mind that a lot of the conspiracy theorists that actually do endorse these, they're not the obviously crazy types. They're people just like you and me who happen to believe something that's incorrect because they saw it on YouTube, whatever else. And so, and also across the spectrum. So a lot of the attention goes to right-wing conspiracy theories, for obvious reasons. They tend to be the most damaging. They're politically motivated. Trump used them very effectively. But there's also left-wing conspiracy theories across the board. And so a couple points I would say, keep in mind that most people believe things that aren't true. In fact, everybody does. They just don't. They're blind to them because they don't know what they don't know, right? And so I would say the main thing is to have sympathy for them, because we're all in error at times. I'm sure I believe things that aren't true, and also keep in mind that part of the reason here is that facts change over time. There's a book that came out about maybe 10, 15 years ago called The Half-Life of Facts, and what happens is that people have a fact that's baked into their understanding, and they carry that forward.
Right.
People don't routinely revisit them. They don't subject them to further testing. In for example, the way that doctors, continuing ed, if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, psychologist, your profession, you're required to update your training to hear the latest things, this and that, and that's not true for many facts. And so we get locked in that this is true, and it becomes baked into our assumptions. And again, we use that as a basis for our opinions for decades in some cases. Yes. And in many cases, they're accurate. Other cases, those have been subsumed by later, better evidence, and they're not true.
Yeah. It's a book I always mention, so I'm sure I've discussed it with you on a previous podcast, but it's just the Michael Shermer's Why People Believe Weird Things, which is a book I enjoyed. But in it is a chapter called "Why Do Smart People Believe Weird Things?"
Right.
And he makes the point that just being smart or having a high IQ or having a higher education does not somehow immunize you from how your brain processes information.
Absolutely.
And he said there might be some things about what people with higher degrees, like by percentage, or more or less report what they believe in. But a kind of interesting paradox occurs, which is higher educated people are better at communicating what they believe. So if someone could be a college graduate or have their PhD, but if they believe in ghosts or think they saw a UFO or believe in conspiracy theory X, they're able to articulate it even better than the average conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and that of course gives it credibility.
Right. So but so there's no, in the case of any particular conspiracy theory, one can try to fact check and detangle facts and look up, does the moon spin or whatever, and find out whatever you can find out. But in terms of conspiracy theory thinking, that's almost like a human trait. Like we all love stories and we all process information. So in a certain sense, as both you and Bobby were saying, and I said earlier, it kind of takes just like a gentle, almost kindness when talking to a conspiracy theorist. Again, there might be the extreme Alex Jones cases where one needs to be more active in your defense of reality versus nonsense.
Sure, and again, there's it's not just elaborate conspiracy theories, right? There are nuggets of factually incorrect information that people build into them. So, for example, the question about whether the moon rotates. Yes, the moon rotates. It is a fact. Jerry, you were right. If you want to clip that out and save it. I know you don't highlight very often. Yes, you were right. The moon does in fact rotate, but because of the way it rotates, it faces us. And so again, that doesn't mean that somebody who thinks the other way is stupid. It just means that it's one little nugget that can easily be plugged into a bigger constellation, right? We were talking before about anomaly hunting. Yeah. Right. So you say, well, why? This is weird. Why is this the only thing that doesn't rotate? Well, it does. So your premise is wrong. It doesn't mean that conspiracies are right or wrong. It just means that to the extent that you've built a foundation of belief on the system, that particular plank or data point is wrong, and so it needs to be removed or just not considered when you're building the rest of the worldview.
Yeah. So that was in the Facebook post that got the most traffic, and thank you everybody who did make a post and shared. I can't obviously just read them all, but I phrased it as, tell me a conspiracy theory you think is stupid, but tell me a conspiracy theory that you believe in. And it was just interesting to see I mean, some people said they don't believe in conspiracy theories, but a
Right,
lot of people
across
did
the
play
board.
the game and listed a thing that they consider plausible or could be true, often to do with government cover-ups of different types, which there
Sure.
have been government cover-ups. So
Yeah, well, again, I mean, it depends. I mean, the there are conspiracy theories that have nothing to do with government cover-ups. So, for example, price fixing, Wall
yeah,
Street conspiracies,
yeah,
Archer Daniel Midland's
yeah,
pharmaceutical. I mean, there there's lots and lots and lots of conspiracies and
yeah,
conspiracies that there are absolutely true, absolutely real.
yep,
It is, a conspiracy is it's a criminal complaint. In fact,
yep.
our past president has been charged with that.
With it.
So
Indeed.
yeah,
Yeah,
so keep that in mind. So again, the
yeah.
conspiracies, again, it evokes a very specific and somewhat
Mhm.
caricatured version of what they are.
Let me say one more thing about that, and then we can craft to a quick close. But I just want to say, young Jerry, you'll be surprised to learn, used to work in a bookstore. And one of my favorite sections to be in the bookstore was the New Age section.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, and again, this is I thought it was funny. I wasn't picking on anybody, but the New Age section itself is funny because it has all the New Age stuff in it. So there'll be books on tarot next to books on ghosts, next to books on rune stones, next to ghosts, about haunt, like 80 different topics. And I used to wonder if people would stand there and look at what they were interested in. Like, here's my books on tarot cards. But would they side eye the other topics like crystals? Who the hell believes in that? Like, if you went into the aisle, were you required to believe in everything in that aisle? And I kind of feel that way about conspiracy theories. That in the broadest sense, there's so many big and little, important and mundane, and many of them tell interesting stories. And it's very possible to believe in one and think that next one is bunk.
Yeah, that reminds me. There was an article published in Skeptical Briefs newsletter. God, it's been probably 20 years ago or so. I remember reading it because it was interesting, and it was written. It was a short piece. It was written by somebody who, like you, worked in the bookstore, and they would see. And this, I mean, you didn't write the piece because I would have
No, I
remembered
did
that.
not.
But
I would remember too.
But no, it was interesting because he was sort of saying something similar. It was like, it was interesting that people would come in, they would buy books, and then the same customers would return a couple weeks later and buy other books. Sometimes they contradicted the books that you already bought.
Yep.
And it's like there was no cognitive dissonance. It was all like, hey, ghosts are real, but they're not real, and it's all.
In the mix,
and there was some research on conspiracy theory that came out a couple years back, and I remember it was talking about how this one particular study, and I don't have the data right in front of me, but basically the conclusion was that for some conspiracy people, they have, again, no cognitive dissonance, so they believe that both Princess Diana was killed in the tunnel and that she wasn't, and they will endorse items on a scale saying, yes, I believe this is true, yes, I believe this is true, and you're like, that they can't both be true.
True.
And it's like, well, and because to them the endorsement is about the bigger picture. The endorsement is, well, they're lying to us, whoever they is. They're
right.
So it's interesting because, again, we get into this thing that's called symbolic endorsement, where people will they'll endorse some conspiracy theory, or like when I was writing for Discovery News, I was writing about Obama, and Obama was president at the time, and I was writing a piece about how a certain number of people, not a lot, but a certain number of people, claimed that Obama was the Antichrist. And
I heard that.
Yeah, and I think it was like 15% or 17% or something, and it was, and because as I was writing, I'm like, this is interesting, right? So when I dug into it, what you find is that most people don't literally genuinely think that Obama is the Antichrist as described in the Book of Revelation, this and that. So
right.
I mean, there's a whole, as you know, there's a whole thing about the Antichrist and the rise of all this sort of 666. And so when you dig deeper, yeah, a few of them you think he's the Antichrist. Most of them, what they mean is, I hate Obama. And if a pollster comes to them and says, do you think Obama's the Antichrist? They say, oh, yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't literally mean I mean, some people might, but again, it's called symbolic endorsement. It's important to keep that in mind when you're interpreting some of these, like, oh my God, it's crazy. You know, a third of Americans think X, Y, or Z. Maybe not.
Right. And as Ben texted me while we were talking, and I'll bring this full circle and we'll wrap up. I made like a 60-second rant about the incorruptible nun that's Kansas, somewhere in the news lately anyway.
Yes, I saw
and
that.
Yes. And yeah, the word incorruptible escaped me. But you remind me of it just to say this, and we can use this as a segue to end. Just the idea that when I was looking up what incorruptible meant, it said little or no decay. And by putting the word little in, it just opened up that like chaos, right? Like, I mean, anything is really acceptable. Yes, a little decay, it's a saint, it's okay. But it is kind of like that. Like, you can simultaneously believe Princess Di died in the tunnel, sadly. But there's still like a little room for maybe not.
Right.
So there's a lot of that a little in like casual conspiracy theory thinking. All right. Well, Ben, thank you so much. Bobby Borgia as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bobby.
This is going to be 3 more episodes, the first Sunday of every month. There is an elephant in the room. A friend texted me last night and said, why the hell am I doing this on Football Sunday? And I said, there's 2 churches I don't go to, the religious church and the church of the NFL. So for you NFL atheists, thank you for joining us. And also anyone listening to this on the podcast in the future, it won't be the NFL Sunday anymore. So enjoy the podcast episode. I've invented a time machine, Ben. Doesn't take a flux capacitor. It just takes Twitch and YouTube. So we will project ourselves into the future. Ben, any last thing? Anything you want to promote? Anything going on? You mentioned your podcast. I'll put a link to that in the description to the published podcast.
Yeah, just you can find me on Facebook. I do have a column in Skeptical Inquirer magazine every issue. The podcast Squaring the Strange. I have a new book out. My most recent book is called America the Fearful. Media and the Marketing of National Panics. So it's not really about paranormal or ghosts. It's more about the cultural literacy. So yeah, check it out, America the Fearful. And you very kindly mentioned one of my books, Big If True, which is one of my favorites because it's sort of a collection of, I think it's like there's like 50 or 60 small chapters of my different investigations all around the world into weird stuff. So it's a fun one.
Yes, I enjoyed it. Thank you. And I'll also both get a copy of for myself, but link up your new book as well in the description if anyone wants to follow up, as they should. All right. I've already mentioned that I'm doing this, and I'll just repeat. We have a new merch shop. I have it up on the screen now. And we have a new website, comicalheathen.com, which also has all the past episodes archived. So you can just go to that website. And this podcast version is on all the normal platforms. So you can find on iTunes and anywhere else that there are podcasts, but also on our new website. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much, Bobby. Thank you, everyone and anyone who's listening. And I always end every episode with this little saying that makes me happy. It may be your dogma, but it's my karma. And I'm all about spreading the love. Thank you, everybody.